Story 1. You need 3 things. 1. Be competent. It is not necessary to be amazing or exceptionally good, just consistent. Be social and visible in a tasteful way. Luck. You can work on the first 2, and those will increase your chances of luck. Story 2. If you have a competent supervisor, seeking favor is counterproductive. Working diligently, being smart, being fortunate, and maintaining a respectful attitude are key determinants of success. If your supervisor is ineffective, seeking favor may become the primary path to advancement. Story 3. I believe it is important to differentiate between being overly flattering and being pleasant to work with. If you are skilled at your job, you do not need to flatter others to advance. If you are difficult to work with, no amount of skill will prevent you from being overlooked for promotions. Story 4. Being nice to work with is not favoritism. This skill is essential for advancing in your career, as being unpleasant will hinder your progress. Story 5. Certainly, it depends on your environment. I have not noticed any overt flattery in the sense of sycophantically telling someone that all their ideas are great. Perhaps I would have done better if I had done some of that, but I doubt it. Good leaders, the kind of people who are successful and whom you want to be around because they will make you successful, tend to highly value constructive criticism. They want to find out about problems early, when they can be fixed cheaply, rather than discovering them the hard way later. Certainly, in the times I have been in a position above someone, that was my attitude. Therefore, they tend to want the opposite of flattery. That said, it is very valuable to be able to take and give feedback and comments in a diplomatic way. Telling someone their idea is not good may be true, but it is not useful or professional. Telling them that there will be major difficulties selling that idea to your customers for a specific reason is far more useful. If you find yourself dealing with someone who just wants to be told their ideas are great, consider finding a different place to be. Leaders like that are bound to fail and take you with them. Even truly brilliant people make mistakes sometimes. Story 6. Knowing whose favor to seek is usually more important than the gesture itself. Seeking favor with your boss or manager is not worth it. Seeking favor with the secretary who manages catering for the office and oversees crucial day-to-day operations that maintain a steady workflow for everyone else is 100% worth it. Story 7. It's pretty important unless you are really good at what you do, and even then you will still have to do some work. It is easy to get sidelined if you are not likable. Story 8. I think people with poor emotional intelligence often confuse being supportive with excessive flattery. This is common among individuals in their early 20s who have not outgrown the sarcastic phase of adolescence. They tend to view the world as inherently ironic and distrustful, scrutinizing every interaction to determine if they are being attacked. If you have a coworker or manager who does something commendable and you acknowledge it, these individuals often react defensively, ridiculing you, which can skew public perception of normal social interactions. If this comment has upset you, it may indicate that you are struggling to understand your own difficulties and should reconsider how you interact with coworkers if you wish to improve your situation. Or don't. It's your choice. Story 9. I believe hard work and following established rules are essential. Your decisions will depend on whether you feel these rules contribute to genuine workflow efficiency and, if not, whether you have the necessary tolerance to maintain them, even if they are ineffective. I worked in healthcare at one of the largest hospitals in the country for about a decade until the COVID-19 pandemic. My manager and site director consistently encouraged me to take supervisor positions. I worked hard but was not overly flattering. I was genuinely friendly with everyone and well-liked, but I did not hold back in expressing my thoughts when things were not functioning properly. When I transitioned into the supervisor role, it became about navigating bureaucratic procedures that did not actually benefit the workflow. Higher-ups value such practices regardless of their impact. I understand the importance of documentation. However, when you are overwhelmed at 50% staffing with nearly 1,000 patients in the hospital, the last thing on your mind is whether you signed off on cleaning the intravenous compounding space. I frequently clashed with management because I was straightforward and honest about our challenges, particularly staffing shortages and inadequate pay, which were never addressed. I eventually left for a smaller hospital in the network and took the night shift. This schedule suits me better, allowing me to work more independently and tackle projects without excessive interaction with higher-ups who tend to nitpick from an administrative angle. Unfortunately, many managers and administrative staff complete their education, work a residency for a year focused on projects and staffing off shifts, and then attempt to devise solutions without a clear understanding of the root causes or what working in the setting entails. Finding a manager willing to take on a shift to truly understand the experience is rare. Other industries may differ. In short, while ingratiating oneself may be one strategy, a better approach is learning to navigate the system. There are multiple paths to the same outcome. Some are simply easier than others. However, hard work cultivates experience and knowledge, which I believe are the most valued, even if they are not always applied effectively. Story 10. I become suspicious of people who are overly nice to me without reason. I prefer those who achieve results. If flattery leads to promotions, you are in a workplace where leaders value friendships over competent colleagues, which can be a recipe for disaster. We don't need to be best friends to be successful. We must focus on getting the job done. Story 11. I was a maverick, wrote my own rules, and didn't answer to anyone. Guess what? I didn't progress that far. I was respectfully told by someone I greatly respect that I needed to be more accommodating to advance. I begrudgingly followed that advice, and now I am thriving with 3 promotions in 5 years. Story 12. The question is quite vague, but I believe it pertains to careers. I work in software engineering. I do my job to the best of my ability, without trying to ingratiate myself. Each time I received a significant pay increase, it was primarily due to applying for positions with a higher salary than my current one, performing well in the interview, and then receiving an offer. The largest increases also came from relocating to wealthier areas of the country. For example, my initial jobs were in the north of England, where pay is typically much lower. However, applying for positions in London dramatically boosted my salary. If I wanted to significantly increase my salary again, I would likely pursue a remote job with an American company, as the salaries for those positions are quite high. For me, it was never about ingratiating myself. Perhaps someone can share an experience about how ingratiating themselves worked for them. Personally, I find it difficult to do and believe it is unnecessary. I notice many comments from people sharing their beliefs rather than real experiences. Be cautious when taking advice from anyone who hasn't truly risen through the ranks. Story 13. What I have found to be the most important aspects in corporate America, as a small contributor at a Fortune 100 company, are 1. Visibility. Working on projects that are important to your superiors and being thorough and organized is crucial. Work hard and communicate your efforts. Many people are diligent workers, but most believe it is admirable to keep their heads down and push through. It is essential to balance the ability to focus on tasks without complaining and to later share how many hours you dedicated to making a project successful. Support your colleagues. In addition to advocating for your own efforts, promote your direct colleagues as well. A strong team benefits everyone, and I have received more promotions because my team gained a reputation as a high-performing group, of which I was a significant contributor, rather than being recognized as the top performer on a poorly performing team. Story 14. Rising through the ranks of conventional success in this world is a healthy mixture of ambition, social strategy, and luck. Story 15. If you are entering the corporate world, it is extremely important to remember that when your manager is objectively wrong, they are still seen as right. Story 16. It depends on the organization, culture, and structure. If the business is run as a meritocracy, pandering is frowned upon. Your work is your value. The issue arises when fiefdoms develop and power becomes centralized in a hierarchical authority that has devalued merit and instead promotes loyalty. Now you have a structure of individuals that you must appease in some arbitrary manner. By definition, to the victor and their most favored associates go the spoils. These cultures devolve with that power matrix, becoming toxic, combative, and unlivable. They experience high employee turnover as entropy sets in. This is because the focus on the work, which should be 100%, is divided by office politics and the need to ingratiate oneself to the bosses. Interestingly, startup companies, which typically are not nepotistic, tend to be very flat and due to insufficient funds focused. The output is all that matters as they spend limited resources trying to reach the market. This can happen, but it often does not. Startups maintain flat structures, employing just enough people to reach the next milestone. This flatness minimizes communication. An artifact of hierarchical fiefdoms is the incessant layers of communication, with each layer repeating the information from the one below. Finally, culture plays a significant role. Good leadership sets the gold standard. If top leaders frown upon pandering and focus on results, it sends a message that reduces the likelihood of employees faking it until they make it and trying to charm their way up the ladder. However, the role and type of department also influence this dynamic. In marketing, for example, which is the art of persuasion, you inevitably see much more of this behavior, and you can almost identify factions developing. Story 17. Bitter and socially inept people often label being likable and helpful as insincere flattery. Most people recognize that unless you possess exceptional talent that overshadows your social skills, the preference usually goes to the person who is easier to be around. Therefore, I would say that unless it is clear that you work for an incredibly vain person, genuine flattery is not as important. Being personable, however, is essential. Story 18. Assign a number to every letter of the alphabet in order. So A equals 1, B equals 2, C equals 3, and so on up to Z equals 26. Knowledge 11 plus 14 plus 15 plus 23 plus 12 plus 5 plus 4 plus 7 plus 5 will get you 96% of the way there. Close, but not quite. Hard work 8 plus 1 plus 18 plus 4 plus 23 plus 15 plus 18 plus 11 is better at 98%, but still not enough. If you want to get ahead, what you need is some good old-fashioned nepotism. 14 plus 5 plus 16 plus 15 plus 20 plus 9 plus 19 plus 13 is equal to 111. But it's the ass-kissing, 1 plus 19 plus 19 plus 11 plus 9 plus 19 plus 19 plus 9 plus 14 plus 7 is equal to 127. That will really put you over the top. Story 19. A lot of abrasive people blame their problems on not being willing to flatter others. For them, anything less than being abrasive is considered flattery. It's a form of arrogance, as if to say, I'm so brilliant I shouldn't have to state my views politely. These individuals hit a ceiling quickly and never realize it. Then there are the actual sycophants who ingratiate themselves with superiors while undermining subordinates. These individuals can progress fairly far despite being disliked. Story 20. Try to align with a leader who has high emotional intelligence. Such a leader can recognize potential in others and mentor you to advance in your career. Story 21. That truly depends on how good you are at your job. Once you bring in more revenue for the company than they pay you, they will never fire you. Story 22. It never helps to be rude to a boss or company owner, even if you absolutely despise them. Story 23. Play the game. I was the squeaky wheel and I was replaced. I was right, but I still got replaced. Story 24. It depends on many factors. I have never been someone who seeks approval, but I perform well, work hard, and achieve results. This has given me some leeway in being slightly difficult. Do you need to seek approval? No, but you better work very hard and be at least marginally better than average if you choose not to. I refuse to seek approval. I will always remain cordial at a minimum, even when I am upset, unless I am highly confident I am right. The hard work and energy I put into driving results allow me the opportunity to firmly stand my ground when necessary without having to seek anyone's approval. Either excel in what you do and care about your performance, or be willing to compromise your principles. Story 25. I have worked at 3 different places where the managers promoted friends instead of those who had already worked there. In my last job, I secured the position because my friend's grandfather knew the manager, who made a phone call on my behalf. I believe that building connections and networking are among the most important aspects of career advancement. While it is not necessary to overly ingratiate yourself, it is advisable to make a good impression on those in positions of power. Story 26. In my experience, it is very important. I may be socially awkward, but I work hard, manage my responsibilities, and ensure tasks are completed. Unfortunately, I did not secure the contract. The person who did get it did little work, talked excessively, and relied on charm to impress anyone in a higher position. He showed a lack of concern for the job, as he himself admitted. Story 27. You either have to be overly friendly or exceptionally skilled at what you do, typically related to generating revenue or reducing costs, so that people do not mind your approach. Story 28. Extremely, but it can never be too obvious. Some people will see right through it, or your peers will dislike you for it. I would also say that being generally likable, pleasant to be around, and reliable is more valuable than any amount of flattery. No one is going to bring you along if they can't stand you. Story 29. It's like wearing a nice pair of well-fitting running shoes while doing a marathon. It's not absolutely necessary, but it helps a lot. Story 30. It depends on your skills. When you possess abilities that others lack and are in high demand, you do not need to seek approval from anyone. The more average you are, the more it may help to compensate. Story 31. In my country, there has been a major step forward. In most workplaces, if you curry favor with higher-ups, you advance quickly. Hardly any company seeks your talents or capabilities. Story 32. In my experience observing the typical office environment and its day-to-day activities, you are more likely to succeed unexpectedly and accidentally earn slightly more money by simply sitting near the person who assigns teams. If you have sufficient, though not necessarily ideal, qualifications to be the most bothersome person on the team, you may get promoted just to be removed from the department. Typically, the individuals who followed others around like a small dog were viewed as bothersome rather than irritating. They sat far away at the opposite end of the room and were tasked with tedious work that was not a priority but still necessary for the project because the person they were assisting recognized that they would complete it. Story 33. It is important to be diplomatic and respectful but not overly submissive. Listen more than you speak, but ensure you maintain your own informed opinions. Emphasis on informed. If you think one way and your supervisor thinks another, your supervisor will likely prevail in that situation. However, in any organization of value, there exists a culture where your supervisor listens to you. This approach is not about flattery. Instead, it is about continuous learning, building credibility through performance, and possessing the appropriate interpersonal skills to know when to be assertive and when to agree with, "Yes, supervisor," right away. Story 34. Flattery is a useful way to enhance the luck and privilege needed to advance within an organization. Story 35. Respectful communication with coworkers and supervisors is important, along with being competent in your work and going the extra mile. You may encounter individuals who perceive this as excessive flattery, but these individuals often struggle in their careers and face challenges early on in various jobs. Story 36. Critically reframe your perspective. It isn't insincere flattery if you genuinely mean it. It isn't meaningless praise if you truly want to honor someone's contributions. Instead, strive to be generous and sincere with your compliments. People appreciate being recognized, especially when it feels authentic. A more important rule for success is to praise publicly and criticize privately. You must practice both and be aware of when and how to do so. Additionally, offer private praise but do so sparingly. Public recognition is significantly more beneficial for everyone involved. Story 37. If you think of it as seeking favor, then you will not get very far. Serve others as you appreciate being served. Story 38. That depends. Are you good looking? If so, then flattery will help. If you are not good looking, then simply engage in flattery consistently. Otherwise, it will seem more noticeable or obvious. Story 39. The answer to this depends on your privilege. Are you a white man? Pleasing others may not be necessary unless there are extenuating circumstances. Speaking as a woman, they are generally expected to put in extra effort in their communication to avoid being labeled as controlling. If you can attain a leadership position, you should be diplomatic with everyone, including those you oversee, or you may face sabotage. There is also the aspect of physical attractiveness. If you lack it, advancement can be more difficult. If you possess it, you might move up, but people may attribute your success to your appearance rather than your abilities. Story 40. Depends on how much you value self-worth, but it can take you to the highest of offices. Look how far J.D. Vance has come living the dream. Story 41. Being responsive, consistent, and reliable are far more important in my experience. Additionally, this varies significantly between an engineering firm and an investment firm. People who seek to gain favor are easily identifiable and often create annoyance among upper management while stirring up drama. Story 42. You don't need to kiss up to anyone in the real world, but you do need to play the game. Give people respect when it's due, and treat others with kindness and empathy. Be pleasant to work with and be enjoyable to be around. Many people confuse being considerate with insincerity. They simply aren't considerate individuals, so when you are, they think you are being disingenuous. It is considerate to respect your supervisor, to remember your coworkers' children's names, and to be aware of what your colleagues, friends, and family enjoy and are currently doing in their lives. My goal is to ensure that people feel better, at least in some way, after interacting with me. That's about it. Story 43. I won't do it, and that's why a less competent coworker is being treated like royalty, while I actually get things done and receive constant disrespect. I'm very blunt and honest. I treat all people the same. Story 44. Flattering without skills leads to rapid job changes. Flattering with moderate skills results in quick advancement while maintaining your position. Flattering with high skills does not lead to advancement because real skills are required to perform the actual work. Story 45. If you can be funny and likable too. For some reason, I had a great connection with a boss in a previous role. She promoted me twice to positions I was not qualified for. Others in a similar role had been there 3 times as long as I had, but she did it because I think she just liked me. Story 46. Humans are more developed socially than in other competencies, which is why social skills are the most important in almost all cases. You just need to be competent at your job like most people are. Then the rest is how you engage in the social environment. Story 47. It really depends on more than just that. No one has worked every job, so there will be various opinions, and pleasing those in authority is subjective. For example, I do my job. I've never sought favor with higher-ups. I'm simply competent in what I do and skilled at it. In my field, that is what they want to see, and those are the people who advance. The other day, the manager called me in to discuss an opportunity that opened up. He expressed that he doesn't want to see me leave my current role, but considers me a valuable asset for the company's broader objectives. However, in some fields, being good at your job can keep you in place, leading to poor management as less competent individuals move up. In my opinion, the subjectivity of seeking favor is evident when less skilled or lazy workers see others excelling in their jobs and receiving promotions. They often say, "So-and-so is only seeking favor. That's why they're moving up." From my perspective, it seems those who complain the most about this tendency generally have lower work ethics and skills than their peers. Story 48. It can make things go faster, but I have never received anything I have enjoyed from flattering others. It is much better to earn it, in my opinion. Story 49. Rise through the ranks, as in being promoted within a corporation, is very important. There are other definitions of success and various paths to achieve it. However, things tend to be easier if you make people feel good. Story 50. It depends on your organization and the personalities in management. In some cases, it is the only path forward, while in others, your superiors may disapprove of you for being overly agreeable. Story 51. Being overly ingratiating will only get you so far in a toxic work environment. You want to be someone who is pleasant to work with. This means doing your job, being approachable, and being open to learning. It may take some time, but as your coworkers and managers move on, they will recommend you for jobs with them or their connections. Those who are overly ingratiating will not receive the same treatment. Story 52. Whether in business, politics, or social settings, organizations are human enterprises, and it will be humans who decide who advances and who declines. Someone must trust you to grant you more power, responsibilities, or influence. People tend to trust those they like or know. You must either become likable or become well-known. Story 53. Competency, a drive to grow and develop, and the ability to connect with others in a positive manner are essential qualities. Flattery may not hinder your progress, but demonstrating competence and ambition will go much further in building a positive reputation. It is still possible to see individuals advance in their careers despite underperformance. Story 54. I disagree with most of the comments here. Flattery may be important, but it totally depends on the personality and emotional needs of your boss or bosses. Your most important skill is to read people and effectively communicate with them on their terms. In my experience, most competent chief executive officers do not want people who simply agree with them and tell them what they want to hear. They want individuals who will tell the truth and challenge them with different viewpoints or ideas. That said, some leaders do just want their egos stroked. You need to be able to tell the difference and act accordingly. Story 55. It can be important in certain careers or institutions, but not as important as talent, energy, and ambition, especially as you rise further. Additionally, talented individuals often avoid environments where flattery is valued. Story 56. There's flattery and then there's flattery. Flattery is negative when you go out of your way to try to gain favor with your supervisor without fulfilling your responsibilities or to receive special treatment. Those who bring coffee, snacks, gifts, and get overly friendly do so to avoid work or leave early, hoping the supervisor will overlook their mistakes. Then there is what some people call flattery, where you are simply a good employee. Arriving a little early, putting in extra effort, and occasionally taking on additional tasks are qualities of a dedicated employee. If that results in a promotion, a pay raise, or increased trust from your supervisor, that's positive. However, those unwilling to put in any effort may label you as someone who flatters. Story 57. I definitely don't do it. My approach has always been to get along with the people the manager trusts the most. Start with dedication and enthusiasm. About a month in, bring donuts or something that everyone generally likes, and then use the momentum to solidify your social standing in the workplace. No need for flattery. Story 58. Not so sure about flattery, but making connections is definitely the way to advance or, at the very least, gain some advantages. If you aren't well known, then try to get to know someone who is. Story 59. There is a famous graduation speech where the speaker claims there are 3 important things in jobs. 1. Be competent at your job. Finish the job on time. Be pleasant to work with. The secret is that you actually only need to be good at 2 of the 3. So, if you are incompetent, at least be predictable and pleasant. If you are always late, at least be competent and pleasant. If you are unpleasant, at least be competent and predictable. I generally believe that having people skills and being easy to work with helps you succeed in anything. Story 60. The thing about flattery is subtlety. If someone knows you are just flattering them, it will hurt your chances. Reading people is also a useful skill. What do the people you are trying to convince look for when promoting? Story 61. Not really. It allows you to reach about the level of mid-management, but then it stops because you cannot compromise your integrity to secure positions above your competence level. Compromising integrity can only help you achieve things you would obtain anyway, but at the expense of competent individuals. However, it cannot elevate you beyond your capabilities, and when it occasionally does, it backfires significantly. Story 62. Not necessarily kissing up, but rather being personable. People want to work with those they enjoy being around. Story 63. It is not about pleasing others. It is about meeting the needs of the business in a way that aligns with management's vision. Brilliant ideas from employees are often undervalued by management and are frequently perceived as dissent. Story 64. It depends on your talent and excellence in the role for which you were hired. The top 10% demonstrate excellence that no manager, and in most cases even their superiors, can overshadow. As a result, you will be recognized as a top performer within the organization. Everyone else may need to be either completely rebellious or overly agreeable. More often than not, people assume they are average, and thus being overly agreeable becomes the default approach. However, unless you are in the top 30%, excluding the top 10%, this strategy will not lead you anywhere. While loyalty is a necessary condition for advancement, it is not sufficient on its own. The only other capability, aside from raw talent or being overly agreeable, that helps individuals move up the ranks is loyalty or years of service. As others leave or are promoted, companies tend to be risk-averse and rely on loyalty as a key metric. Story 65. A person in our office wears brown lipstick every day and is in line for a promotion with a salary increase to 6 figures soon. I would say this is very important. Story 66. It doesn't really help as much as it serves as a safety net. If you have to let someone go, you usually don't choose someone you enjoy interacting with unless they are not performing well in their job. Story 67. My brother once said to me, "It's people like you that make it so people like me can't keep a job." I was driving him to work, and we were 10 minutes late. I was showered and dressed properly and blissfully not hungover. He meant it too. He saw me as someone who was overly accommodating. Perhaps I was, but I didn't consider those actions to be overly accommodating. I think it all comes down to how significant the chip on your shoulder is and how you define being overly accommodating. I'm guessing, since you are asking the question, that you are going to be really miserable and should try to figure out how to never have a boss. By the way, I don't have one now, and I love it. Still have to show up, though. Story 68. It depends on your goals. I was in an industry where flattery was really important, so I changed careers because I cannot keep my mouth shut and I am not a good liar. Now I work in healthcare and have steadily improved my income without relying on flattery. Every job has a customer service aspect, and that is a valuable lesson to remember. However, there is a difference between being helpful and being overly flattering. Story 69. That question depends on your attitude. If you believe in doing only the minimum required, then you may be considered lazy. On the other hand, if you voluntarily accept your job responsibilities and are willing to do whatever is asked, such as coming in early, staying late, and doing whatever it takes to succeed, you will likely see positive outcomes. For example, you might struggle to progress in your job, receive minimal raises, and remain stagnant for years. Conversely, with a proactive approach, you could experience quick promotions, faster raises, and overall success. The choice is yours. Ultimately, you need to decide what kind of person you want to be. Story 70. I want to believe it doesn't help as much as it does, but I watched an incompetent employee get promoted to supervisor. It depends on the manager and other higher-ups. I had a terrible one. Story 71. Not exactly flattery, but having healthy social skills and a wide network of people who possess knowledge. Story 72. I would like to add a few insights to what has already been shared. In my experience, competence and trust are far more valuable than flattery in the real world. Make those in higher positions look good. You may or may not receive credit for this, but do it anyway. Be the kind of person who makes others' jobs easier. Take initiative, solve problems, and be proactive. Avoid being someone who constantly approaches superiors with issues they need to address. Think from a broader perspective. Try to understand things beyond what your current job requires. Grasping the bigger picture often distinguishes those in leadership roles. Prepare thoroughly. Do not enter a meeting or situation without first doing your homework. Over time, you may become experienced and knowledgeable enough to improvise, but it takes years to reach that level. Story 73. There are many books on this subject. Overall, you should engage with it to some extent, but avoid being too obvious. Story 74. You can either excel at your job or build relationships. One of these is necessary for advancement. Story 75. Managers, supervisors, and CEOs find it difficult to punish someone they generally care for. As a result, those who are favored often receive special status even with a mediocre work ethic. Meanwhile, the dedicated employees like myself, who excel in production, knowledge, and seniority, are overlooked and even vilified if we come into conflict with one of their favored individuals. I have witnessed this in every industry I have worked in, from logistics to heavy machinery operations to warehousing to construction. Story 76. 1. Demonstrate competence and be willing to tactfully challenge consensus or strategy when something isn't right, even with superiors. Be friendly and genuine, but switch to a serious tone when necessary. Engage in small talk with colleagues while also ensuring they stay on track. Be able to return to casual conversation afterward, it's just business. Ensure that key decision makers know who you are and what projects you have completed without being overly deferential. That is the successful formula, in my opinion. Story 77. I have been told repeatedly that I would hold a high-ranking position if I just played the game, but I would rather be where I am with self-dignity. Story 78. Gen X engineer. Not really important. I can't recall ever having to kiss up at any point in my career. Usually, if that sort of situation arises, that's my cue to find somewhere else to work. I think I've been lucky that I haven't encountered that sort of thing anywhere other than early on in my career. What is important is building relationships. Who you know truly matters. Most career opportunities will first emerge through friends and acquaintances, not through cold job hunting. Remember your friends, and they'll remember you when the time comes. Story 79. I'm not someone who flatters others for favor. On the contrary, I am very honest. I have been promoted 3 times because of my honesty. I consider myself fortunate to have a good manager and a good company. Story 80. I believe school is a good reflection of adult life. The number of top students I have seen trying to gain an extra point is concerning. Story 81. It depends on your definition of ass-kissing and the industry you are in, I imagine. In my industry, I strive to demonstrate my competence by adhering to budgets and delivery timelines while remaining professional and kind in my interactions. This approach has led to frequent promotions. I do not go out of my way to flatter anyone, and I stand up for myself when necessary. I have a reputation for being dependable and friendly, even if I can be a bit too talkative at times. So, if being kind to colleagues and supervisors is considered ass-kissing, then I would recommend it. However, I do not view basic kindness as being an ass-kisser. In my experience, it does not foster a positive reputation and can lead to frustration when what is needed is for professionals to provide honest feedback from their perspectives. Story 82. A useful note on this topic. Sometimes bosses are strong personalities. These individuals will not respect you if you allow them to dominate you and will dislike you if you openly disagree with them. My strategy has been quite successful so far. Disagree with them often and defend your position vigorously, but only in private. In public, maintain pleasantries and agreement or suggest a discussion offline. Story 83. Honestly, it depends, but it works. What's even better is not causing a stir and being friendly. My supervisors, who hired me, are conservative Christians and know that I am not a fan. I was hired when my hair was green. I don't make crazy waves. I listen to people. I do my work and I make $100,000. It's really that simple. Work ethic and competency, combined with a non-confrontational personality, work wonders. Story 84. The way I think about it is to take your boss and imagine the best version of who they are. Think of the good in them and expect them to live up to the best of themselves. This way, when they do something commendable, you are genuinely happy to see the positive things they do. People sense that authentic reaction. If they do inappropriate things, just don't say anything. Your eyes will communicate the disappointment. This way, you don't feel like you are being insincere, and you also demonstrate leadership qualities. People, unless they are harmful, love to see that their achievements are recognized by their team, and that goes for bosses too. If they expect you to praise them when it's not warranted, or after they have done something unethical, there is more going on behind the scenes, and you may want to reevaluate your position. Story 85. What people don't realize about the corporate world is how different the game is at various levels. At the entry or frontline level, performing the job is crucial. In management, placing people to do the job is important, along with finding ways to ensure they actually perform it. In senior management, it's about predicting future trends and understanding where things are headed. What matters now? What actions should I take to accommodate the expectations of my superiors in 3 months? What am I missing? In executive management, there's a sense of urgency. If we don't take action on specific issues, we are at risk, but it is often unclear what exactly needs to be done. We cannot remain inactive. At each level, you need to understand the next level if you want to progress. This requires a willingness to make increasingly challenging trade-offs regarding life and sanity. The only way to gain this understanding is to learn from those who are already experiencing it. While books and podcasts can provide some insights, they often offer generic information, and you need answers that are specific to your unique situation. Building relationships is essential. One way to do this is implied in your question, but a better approach is to become someone who can clearly provide what the next level needs. How do you determine those needs? Initially, you make educated guesses, read relevant materials, and take a few chances. When it becomes evident that you can add value and simplify their lives, you gain access. In other words, you need something to offer in return. Ideally, you will become a person valued by several individuals at the next level, and then the game truly begins. Story 86. I want to clarify that a better version of kicking ass refers to achieving or overcoming challenges in a field where you excel, rather than engaging in the literal or metaphorical act of kicking others down. This means you are excelling at something to improve yourself among your peers, not undermining others to get ahead, as that is unkind. I am a firm believer in the idea that if you do something well, the money will follow. It's astonishing how easy it is to know more about a subject than most people, as many are unwilling to invest a few minutes each day to learn something new after their formal education. If you are excelling in your field, you will find that fewer people are doing better than you. Your expertise creates scarcity, allowing you to charge more for your skills. Kicking ass can also mean enjoying life and embracing it as it is at the moment. If that's what you desire, pursue it. However, do not complain about not having a luxury car or penthouse if you are not willing to put in the work required to achieve those goals. Story 87. Define kissing up. Sometimes it seems that people define kissing up as going above and beyond or being reliable. I am not saying that is you, but it may be best to elaborate. In my view, anything related to doing your job well is not kissing up. Story 88. Years ago, there was a survey of Fortune 500 chief executive officers, and over 80% of them freely admitted they would rather promote incompetent individuals than capable and competent employees. Story 89. Kissing up can work, but someone who is willing to do so can often be expected to compromise their integrity. If you reach that point and get lucky, you might become someone's favorite. I prefer to rise using my own competence. Story 90. I refuse to ever compromise my morals to advance in my career. Now I am at the top of my game. Turns out you can achieve success by working hard too. It just takes longer. Story 91. You don't need to flatter someone, but acknowledging their success in a task goes a long way. Additionally, giving credit for effective assistance you have received benefits you in the long run. You want to be straightforward and truthful about it. Story 92. Ass kissing and flattery are not important. I have seen more flatterers discarded than general dissidents. My recommendation is to be charismatic. Find common ground with your employers and work hard while not letting others take advantage of you. Prove you have a backbone and that you aren't afraid to walk away. You will get your opportunity to grow. You just have to be competent as well. Story 93. Flattery is the only qualification needed to become the leader in either public service or private business. Intelligence, responsibility, knowledge, seriousness, and professionalism are not required. Trust me, I know from personal experience. Story 94. I have never compromised my values in my life. I have paid dearly for that. I still succeeded, but it made things more difficult than necessary. Story 95. How much more likely would you be to want to work with someone if they showed you appreciation occasionally, compared to someone who never does? You may not realize it, but you are part of the group, and perhaps someday you will be in a position to help someone else succeed. Consider how you would feel about it, as that is likely how many others feel as well. Story 96. My success has come from being valuable, pleasant, and making my career desires known. Luck is also a factor, but it is born from ambition and opportunity. Flattery may help in toxic work environments, but in places worth working, it is a crutch at best and detrimental at worst. Story 97. You can be completely inept and entirely unproductive. If you are present and on time every day with a good attitude and show some politeness occasionally, you are likely to end up in middle management. Story 98. Not necessary. In fact, Many leaders in companies dislike sycophants. I have advanced 6 ranks from intern in 10 years at my current company. I summarize it as 1. Be genuine. Care about your work and perform it well. Be transparent and proactive. Avoid flattery. Story 99. Ass kissing, no. Complimenting, yes. I don't go around saying my boss is the best ever. But when she does something well, I make sure to let the people around me know, including my coworkers and management. For example, my office needed to redistribute some work. When a coworker left, she adjusted that position to be one that was needed. I told her supervisor at a conference that she was making great changes in the office by helping to even out the workload. Story 100. Don't seek approval. Show genuine interest beyond your role. Ask questions when others hesitate. If you notice a potential mistake, speak up. If someone with more knowledge advises against it, politely ask if they could explain what you might be missing, if they have the time. Taking initiative truly contributes to a positive work environment, but it must be a constructive workplace. This is becoming increasingly difficult to find these days. Story 101. I wouldn't compromise my values. If you want something, you go and get it. Acting nice is important when needed, but always be aware of the emotions required in the moment. People may step on you to get ahead, especially if they perceive you as someone who tries too hard to please others. Stay strong and maintain your distance. Story 102. Or you can realize that seeking approval from others is demeaning to you and is proof that the hierarchical system you wish to ascend relies on exploitation and should be dismantled at all costs. Story 103. I have never compromised my principles. I let my work speak for itself. I am assigned so much work that I eventually become important enough to be promoted to a better position. But that is just my approach. Story 104. Confidence is truly the key. If you want to be the second highest in a given organization, then ingratiating yourself will get you there, but everyone knows and has no respect for that person. Story 105. Stop running just for 10 times in a row. After that, evaluate your social interactions. If you end up as a new entrepreneur or a passive observer, come back and update us with your insights. Story 106. In my experience, it's an 80-20 situation. However, you need to achieve 100, and you must have a minimum in both areas. You can be 80% job competent and 20% social, and you can advance in your career just fine. You can also be 80% social and 20% competent and achieve the same result. However, you cannot be missing the 20%. You need at least basic competency, and you cannot simply be abusive. As someone who is 80% competent, I observe that individuals like myself have little respect for those who succeed by focusing primarily on social skills. They often barely meet the minimum job requirements and rely on others to carry the load. Story 107. I worked at a place for 10 years as a manager, overseeing various tasks and responsibilities, which was validated by my colleagues. My boss hired his best friend's partner, who had no formal training or relevant experience and was unable to complete tasks independently. Despite this, she was earning more than I was within a year. Unfortunately, it often comes down to who you know and how you know them. Story 108. It's not necessarily about flattering others, but being friends with the right people can significantly impact your career advancement, more than simply excelling at your job. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.